Good afternoon. We'll be starting the webinar in just about 5 minutes. For a couple of those people that are already online, if you would go ahead and type yes into the question box if you can hear my voice and see our screen. Okay, lots of yeses coming in. Thank you. Appreciate it. We'll again be starting in just about 5 minutes.
Good afternoon. Thank you for logging in for today's webinar. This is the Office of Early Learning, and this is the webinar for VPK, the VPK Provider Improvement Process Overview. Again, my name is Cassandra Jackson, and I am a VPK Educational Policy Consultant with the Office of Early Learning, and also today is Gary Savage. He's here joining us, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Okay, just a review of just a few webinar etiquette tips and things that might help you as we go through today's presentation. Because of the large number of folks that we have logged into the webinar, everyone's phone and audio is on mute. So if you have questions today as we're going through the information, we're going to do our best to address them, but you will need to type them into the question or comment box, which you can find in the webinar control panel on the top right side of your screen. Also, in today's presentation, we do have 5 handouts that are available. Again, they're in the handout section from the webinar control panel on the right side of your screen, unless you've moved it. And those handouts are a copy of today's presentation, as well as some documents that we will be referring to within the presentation. We already, a few minutes ago, asked for folks to type yes in the box if they can hear us, and I still see some yeses coming through, so I appreciate that. That means everything on our end is working the way we have planned it to. Okay, and I'm going to give this slide over to Gary, who's going to talk to you initially about some provider resources that we do have available.
Good afternoon. We just wanted to go ahead and bring this to folks' attention. We have over 500 people on the call today. We're not going to be able to answer every question. We are also not, today's purpose of today's webinar is to go over the improvement plan process so that providers understand what they need to do in order to complete those tasks. We are not, our intention is not to do a recap of how readiness rates are calculated or recap the policy that folks may agree or not agree with. We do have a number of things that are helpful resources on this page. So for providers, where we've circled this on the screen in front of you. So if you go to the Office of Early Learning's homepage and you click on that purple menu bar that goes across the page, and you click on VPK, this is the page that comes up when you scroll down. It has resources for providers, and under the bullet that we have circled under providers that says assessments and flickers, you will find the presentations as well as the recorded webinars that we already conducted last month, I guess, or earlier this month, about how the readiness rate is calculated. There is also separate presentations exactly on how to read the reports that we did and recorded and put up there for you all to have access to. And those are very useful resources. Underneath the bullet for assessments and flickers is the one for VPK provider improvement. Today's webinar will be posted there along with the copy and the slides from the presentation for you to be able to come back and reference. On the right side, you can see over there underneath the green column about VPK's program, we have the standards circled, very good resource for providers, and we have the regulations that will take you to both the statutes and the rules that guide the VPK process. So if you're a VPK provider, knowing the statute and the rules that apply to the program that you have contracted with your coalition to provide is a very helpful thing. So again, we just want up front, we'll have the screen at the end as well, but we just wanted to let folks know that today's purpose, we are going to focus on just the improvement plan. We are not going to be able to get into all the little nitty-gritty of how the readiness rates were calculated and the what-ifs and the what-weres. So we want to focus on the need that all of the providers have in front of them right now, or those providers that are needing to file an improvement plan.
Great, thank you. And just to recap for anybody that has joined just a few minutes late, You do have a VPK questions box in the webinar control panel. We have everybody muted right now because of the large number of folks that are logged in. But if you do have a question, you can use that questions box to type it in. And we will periodically pause throughout our presentation and go through some of those questions, and any that we feel would be helpful for the larger group to have clarification on, and we can answer. We will certainly do our best to get to those as quickly as possible, and as many as possible. So moving on for today's presentation, just a quick overview of some of the things we're going to be talking about and presenting to you today. We're going to do a quick review over the related rules that govern our improvement process for VPK providers. We're also going to review the provider on probation requirements and go through those steps with you. And then we're also going to provide an overview of the provider improvement plan development and submission process. So hopefully today's information is going to give you all the information you need if you are a provider on probation, and how to go through the improvement process and successfully submit an improvement plan so we can be ready to go in the next year. Okay, so this is our VPK accountability rule, or one of them, 6M-8.700. This is one that talks about our improvement plan and implementation and what happens on the first year of probation. We did provide you a link to the rule website and the regulations where the full text of this rule can be found. That is on the PowerPoint slide. And so we're not going to read word for word what this rule text says, but it is there, and we wanted to make sure that you have the correct reference for the rules that govern our accountability. All right, so you just saw an excerpt of 6M-8.700, providers on probation in the VPK program improvement plan and implementation for first year probation. We do have some additional rules as well that govern this process. 6M-8.701, provider on probation for the VPK program annual probation progress report. This is for those second year providers on probation who have received a subsequent year of probation for not meeting the rate. Rule 6M-8.702 references the processes for removal from the VPK education program eligibility. This would be for programs that have received 3 consecutive low rates, putting them on probation for 3 consecutive years. That is when you will want to pay attention to the language in this rule for removal from the VPK education program eligibility. And then finally, 6M-8.605, this rule references the VPK staff development plan for providers on probation. This is one of the 2 options that are available as the first target area in the improvement plan, which we will go over here very shortly. Again, all rules, we've given you the link. All of these rules can be accessed from the link on the PowerPoint slide here. This actually will go to all of the VPK rules that govern the entire VPK program, so that is there for you to reference if you need to. All right. So providers on probation, depending on what year the provider program is on probation, there may be different tasks that have to be completed. Year 1 providers, of course, you have to submit an improvement plan electronically. That goes through the Readiness Rate website, and Gary is going to walk you all through those steps later on in our presentation. Part of that improvement plan, the provider must select 2 target areas for improvement. The first target area is mandatory, and it has to be one of 2 things. It has to be either selecting to purchase and implement a DOE-approved curriculum or complete the DOE-approved staff development plan. The curriculum options are listed in the drop-down menu when you're completing the improvement plan, so you will know exactly what those options are. And then we also have them listed on our website. In the coming up slide, you'll see there's a link for that as well. Year 2 provider on probation. This process is when a provider receives a second consecutive year of being on probation for not meeting the minimum readiness rate. You're going to remain on probation in those circumstances and submit a VPK education program annual probation progress report. This is done through the Readiness Rate website and accessing the improvement plan itself. And we'll go through the specifics of that again a little bit later in our presentation. Year 3 providers on probation. These are programs that have received 3 consecutive low rates, not meeting the minimum rate. Those programs are required to apply and be granted a good cause exemption for the VPK program. And if one of those things aren't done, either they're not applied for or they weren't granted the good cause exemption, the program's removed from VPK eligibility for 5 years. All right. So the first link on this slide is our VPK Readiness Rate link. This should be a familiar link to most, if not all of you at this point. This is where all the rates are posted. This is also where you would log in to complete child verification, disputes, when that time period was open, and also where you will view your final readiness rate and complete the improvement process. So I spoke a minute ago about 2 target areas that are required to be submitted as part of your improvement plan. For target area number 1, you would have to use or select either a curriculum option or the staff development option. The curriculum option, we have a list of a drop-down list in the improvement plan of those titles that you can select from. And then if you want additional details about prices and the different types of curriculum that are available in the programs, the complete curriculum packages are linked at that link that's on the slide there, where you can download the whole curriculum information package, how much it costs, the training information, all of that information is posted at the link on the slide. Our staff development plan, this is, again, the alternative to purchasing and implementing a new curriculum, and the actual staff development plan itself was posted as a handout, which you can download from the webinar control panel, but you can also access it and download it from the link provided on the slide. So we're going to talk a little bit about the staff development plan. The staff development plan does have required training before the VPK program begins. These trainings are listed on the staff development plan. So they're listed here on the slide as well. We have the standards course, the implementing the standards for preschool classrooms, emergent literacy for VPK instructors, language and vocabulary in the VPK classroom, and how to administer the VPK assessment. Again, these are trainings that if you choose to implement the staff development plan, they must be completed before the VPK program begins. Now, there are 2 additional trainings that are required to be completed as part of the staff development plan before 50% of the instructional hours are complete. Those are integrating the standards phonological awareness and the VPK assessment instructional implications training. Both of those trainings are available in either instructor-led or online formats and would be acceptable to take as part of the staff development plan in either of those formats. So there's also additional components of the staff development plan that providers are required to implement outside of the training component. We have provided templates that can be used as part of implementing this particular component or these components of the staff development plan. The providers are required to implement the elements in each template, but you do not have to use the template if you have something else that meets the same requirements and elements that the templates do. Really, we just recommend providers use the templates. That way you have the documentation and you know that you are doing what the state is requiring you to do as part of this staff development plan. So this is an example of the first template. This is the staff observation template. The site director or supervisor who observes the VPK class staff should do so biweekly and see that they're incorporating the information gained through staff development and taking written notes. So all the components that are on this observation template are things that the director or supervisor of the VPK program should be observing as part of this element of the staff development plan, and also taking notes to describe what it is they're exactly observing. Again, this is a template that's provided as part of the staff development plan, and it is attached to the webinar in the handout section. So you can download it there. All right. Exhibit B, this is the monthly feedback template. So the site directors and supervisors are required to meet monthly with the teaching staff to provide individualized feedback, reflect, discuss next steps, and record meeting notes in the written plan. This monthly meeting must be about topics covered in the staff development plan. So these are things like phonological awareness, language and vocabulary development, instructional strategies in these areas, as well as the children's assessment scores for these areas in particular. This monthly feedback template provides you the space to document those monthly meetings that you're having with staff, and also to strategize and plan future goals and instruction in the program. Right. And finally, this is Exhibit C of the Staff Development Plan. This is a template that we've provided to help guide the discussion around the VPK assessment data as teachers are administering the assessment in the program. These monthly, or excuse me, not monthly, these meetings with regards to the assessment data are required to happen within 30 days of administering the VPK assessment for each assessment period. So you should have, at the end of the year, 3 of these where you're discussing with staff about implementation of the VPK assessment and how the children are performing based on the data that you're gathering from that. All right. So target area number 2, at the beginning of our presentation, I did mention as part of the improvement plan, providers are required to implement 2 target areas. We just went through the staff development plan, which is one of the 2 for target area 1. Target area 2 provides you with several options on things that your program will focus on, and you can select from any of the 6 that you see here on the slide itself. Again, these are provided in a drop-down format when you're completing your improvement plan. So you can select a minimum of 1 of the following additional areas to implement as part of your improvement plan. Now, the minimum requirement for improvement plans is that you select 2 target areas. We do have many providers who choose multiple target areas, and so if that is something that you want to work on, if you see 2 things on this list that you feel really strongly you can work on to help make improvements, you are free to add an additional target area onto your improvement plan to implement. Okay. So what will you see when you log into to the website to start looking at this process and going through it? This is actually a screenshot of what you will see when you log in and you click on your Final Readiness Rate and Improvement Process icon from your home page. You'll see the first link there is the link to the Final Kindergarten Readiness Rate Report. That has been there and is something that you can click on and hopefully have already reviewed at this stage. The provider acknowledgement is the second blue link that is there. This acknowledgement is step one of the improvement process. You will see that your program type is identified there. So if you have multiple programs, meaning you offer school year and summer, you'll be able to differentiate which program you're submitting the acknowledgement for. You also will have a status indicator there. This example shows that this acknowledgement has not started. Once you start it, that will change to pending, and once it's completed and is submitted, it will show complete there. Now you'll also see that it does say the due date of this acknowledgement is March 9th, 2020. This is a date that you want to pay attention to. Extremely, extremely important, because if you do not complete your provider acknowledgement by that due date, the system will lock down. You will no longer be able to complete the acknowledgement and implement an improvement plan after that date. So March 9th is a date to highlight on your calendar and make sure that you have your acknowledgement submitted no later than that date. You also have a pending task column there that will tell you yes or no that this is a pending task for you to complete. In this example, it is marked as yes as a pending task because, again, the status is sitting as not started. Now, the third link that you'll see on this page is your provider improvement plan. You will not be able to start your improvement plan until you've completed the acknowledgement. So you can click on the improvement plan 3, 4, 5, 10 times, but it will not open and it will not let you move forward until you've completed that acknowledgement above it. So provider improvement plan is the next step in the process. You'll click on that link and it will take you through the steps of completing the questions and information we need for you to submit that improvement plan. Okay, so I mentioned just a few seconds ago, March 9th, the importance of that due date. That is, again, the due date for the provider acknowledgement to be submitted, and you have to complete that before you will be allowed to proceed to completing the improvement plan. Improvement plans are also required to be approved and in place for at least 30 days prior to receiving an advance payment and at least 30 days prior to offering VPK instruction for the next VPK program. Our recommendation and advice is to just get on it as soon as possible. Go ahead and get into the system, complete the acknowledgement. Do not wait till the last minute because inevitably you'll have questions, and it just prevents unnecessary stress if you can get ahead of this deadline so that we're not bumping up so close to when you are wanting to begin your programs for the next year. So March 9th, provider acknowledgement is due, and then your improvement plans have to be completed at least 30 days before you begin your next program. Okay. Before we move on any forward, I think we're going to pause and look at some of the questions. We've seen them coming in. So it'll be a brief pause, but just hang in there with us, and then we'll be right back. Okay, there's a question just asking for clarification. If we do the approved staff development plan, then we don't need to purchase the curriculum. And to clarify that, that is correct. It's one or the other. Your target area one has to be to implement the staff development plan or purchase and implement the curriculum. Okay, if you, just another clarification about staff development plan. If they're electing to implement the staff development plan, again, do we have to change our curriculum? No, you do not. If you're implementing the staff development plan as part of your improvement plan, you will not have to change your curriculum. Okay, there's a question about the good cause exemption process. We will have information going out in the very near future about providers who will need to apply for good cause exemption and what that process will look like for them. So if you are finding yourself in that situation where you're going to be needing to apply for a good cause exemption, just know that we will be sending out communication in upcoming weeks regarding that process specifically. There's a question about, can we be given a report that shows in what the areas where we need improvement or where the children are having trouble in? That's a really great question, and the answer to that is we will be able to provide a classroom level report in upcoming weeks that will show you from a classroom standpoint where the children are scoring proficient at based on the areas that are assessed on the Slickers. That information will be found on the same page that your final readiness rate report is on. It's not there yet, but it will be in upcoming weeks. We will be able to provide, again, it'll be classroom level, so not individual child data, but classroom level on how your larger group of children performed on Slickers. Okay, there's a question about if you're already using a curriculum on the approved provider list, what do you do in that situation? If you're already using a curriculum that's on our VPK approved provider list for providers on probation, you can continue to implement that curriculum. However, you will want to make sure that it is the correct version of the curriculum because the publishers quite frequently update the versions of the curriculum that they have, and so you want to make sure that you're using the correct approved version and that what you're implementing contains all the required components. And so the link that was provided earlier in the presentation will give you the curriculum package and all the different components contained within each curriculum package that you want to make sure that you have if you have already been implementing one of those curriculums. All right, we're still going through some of these questions, so bear with us.
We're just going to pause for a minute. There really are a lot of questions out here. We're trying to vet those that would help everyone.
All right. There's a question about training requirements as part of the staff development plan. If the courses had already been completed by a staff member, do they need to retake it? No, they do not. If the courses have been completed and they're represented as completed on the staff member's transcript, then they will not have to retake those trainings. There's another question asking for clarification of who's required to take the staff development training. It's all VPK staff, so that's going to include your VPK director, your VPK lead teachers, and the VPK teacher assistants in the classroom if there are assistants in the classroom. Another part 2 of that question, what if the teachers we train leave the center? then any new staff that you bring on will have to complete those same trainings that are required as part of the staff development plan.
We're going to pause one more time.
Okay, so there is a question about summer VPK programs that are on probation and the improvement process for them. This situation that's being presented is a program that has both a school year and summer program. And the summer program is on probation. The school year program is not. The improvement process must be implemented during the program that you receive the low rate for. So in this situation, if it's the summer program receives a low rate, then the improvement process must be implemented for the summer program. Another question, what if your VPK teacher is also the site director? Can the school principal or executive director observe? The answer to that question is yes, they can. What school year do VPK readiness rate scores count towards the probation? One of the past 3 years did not count towards probation. Is this true? Yes, that's true. So in the 2016-17 and 2017-18 program years, we did publish rates, but no new providers were put on probation. The 18-19, which is this current rate program year, is the first year since that period of time that providers have been put on probation. Okay, we're just going to pause.
Sorry, we're going to be paused for just a moment here while we look at some more of these questions. Bear with us. Okay, so we're looking at the questions. There are a lot of very specific things and folks' individual circumstances and just very, very discrete questions that people are asking. So we need to move forward with the rest of the presentation. All of the questions that you typed in are going to be recorded. And we do have several frequently asked questions that documents on our website that we will put those up there if there are something that will help everyone, and we'll give you some points of contact later on. But again, we're seeing so many very specific things, and unfortunately, we're going to run out of time here. Okay, so what we want to focus on here is this is the landing page. Once you have logged into the VPK Readiness Rate website, you're going to see some duplicated slides from what we had here before, but where the green arrow is where providers want to focus on now. Verification is finished. We've moved on from preliminary readiness rates. We are now at the final readiness rate and improvement process. So we need the folks out there in the provider community to click on that link, and it takes us to the page. Now, this is the page we just saw a minute ago, and but once you click on that, it's going to take you to where your final readiness rate report is. It'll have your acknowledgement that Cassandra already went over and the improvement plan. So, and we'll go back one screen. So what we do want to point out here, and this is just a screenshot, when the classroom level data is available, it will be posted right below here, and there will be a way for you to download either a PDF or a Excel table of your classroom data. I want to really point out, though, that the classroom data, like much of the data that comes out of the educational world, if it is less than 10 children, that data ends up being suppressed and you don't get to see that. So this really, for those providers that have bigger classes and whatnot, generally they'll see their data. But it may be if you're a small provider and you only serve 9 kids, that classroom data is not going to be helpful to you because we're not going to present it there if it's less than 10 children. So just be aware, within this area right below this box, when it's available, which will be in the coming weeks or so, that's where you're going to find that data. Okay, so if we go on to the next page, this is where the provider does their acknowledgement. You can see where it asks for a couple of pieces of information of who's doing the acknowledgement. They will click on that box that says, I hereby acknowledge, next to the red dot. That's it. At the bottom, they're going to hit submit, and that's all they have to do with the acknowledgement. So after they've done that, it'll tell them that they have submitted the acknowledgement. So we can go on to the next screen. So it tells you you were submitted, it was submitted and successful. It gives you a direct link that you can just go to the improvement process home. That's going to take us back so we can access our improvement plan. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. So now that we have submitted, and it says the acknowledgement has been submitted, there's no longer a pending task there. It has a date that it was submitted on it. Now the provider can click on the improvement plan, the provider improvement plan. You can see where right now it says not started. Okay, so this is the first thing they're going to see when they click on that. This is a long panel page, but this is the top of it, and obviously we've put some boxes over the name of this individual example, but all of this information gets populated, and this is the start of the improvement plan. So if we go to the next screen, which is going to be part of that page we just saw, scrolling down to the bottom, we get to an area where it says target area information. And in this example, we have a provider that chose developmentally appropriate curriculum and administrative and management practices. So when they chose their first target area, they had a choice between the developmentally appropriate curriculum or the staff development plan. Those were the only 2 choices they had. And in this example, they chose curriculum. So their second example, they had wider choices from that list that we showed earlier on in one of the screens, and they chose the administrative and management practices. As Cassandra said, you're required to have 2 target areas, but that doesn't mean somebody can't have 3. It also doesn't mean that somebody can't do curriculum and staff development plan. So there is a lot of choice when it comes into here. It's really just that first target area, that folks need to make sure that they are choosing something that they're going to be able to fulfill and it will work for them. Before we move on to the next screen, I want to notice that above it has a place where there's for them to, the provider, to enter a classroom assessment instrument. This is not a required field. It's just information that's being collected. But I know I've seen a lot of questions about where do I get this? What do I do with it? If you don't have one, this is not a required field as part of the improvement plan. It's simply information that is being requested from the plan. So if we go on to the next screen. So for this provider that in our example that chose curriculum, now what we see is the screen that shows which curriculum they chose. And you'll see that it has a projected purchase date and a projected completion date, and there are no pending tasks. The reason there's no pending task is because this plan is waiting for the coalition to approve it. So what happens is they'll put these dates in. These are when I think I'm going to purchase my curriculum by. This is when I'm going to do my training. After they've selected their secondary target area, they submit the plan for approval. This is what it's going to look like when they're waiting for the coalition to approve it. So we'll go on to the next screen. Oops. There we go. Okay, so in the next screen, this is the drop down for the secondary target area. And it shows where the selections that the provider has. Again, we need to remember that staff development plan or curriculum could be a selection in that second target area as well. Okay, so we're going to pause for just a second. Okay, I wanted to go back one screen. So on this, for the provider, when they're coming back to their plan, if they click on where it says the investigator club, they will get an additional screen that once it has been approved by the coalition will be the screen that the provider can come back to and put those target dates in. So on the screen we're looking at, the actual purchase date isn't there. But when they click on the name of the curriculum that they chose, then they're going to be able to go in there and indicate what were those dates that I purchased the curriculum on and what was the date that the actual training was complete on. So we don't have a screen to show that, but that is what's running behind here if you wanted to click on that Investigator Club title that you see on the page in front of you. Okay, so we'll move forward and so we'll go one more page. So once the provider has gone in, they have selected both target areas. They have put the information in for each of those target areas that the system will be asking them for, and they've got all the dates. Then it gets to a point where they have submitted that plan, and it shows that there are currently no pending tasks. Again, it says in our example here, our VPK provider improvement plan for the school year is submitted on a date given, and its review status is pending, and there are no pending tasks. That means this plan is waiting on the coalition to go in, review, and approve. And once the coalition has done that, then the provider will come back on. They will see where it has been, it shows as approved, and they will have the functionality to go in and enter those dates of when the target things they actually plan to do. One of the things that's not on the screen here that we do want to make sure that we cover is in that staff development plan, and there was a question about it before, is that in the staff development plan, had they gone that route, the provider will need to keep coming back to the plan to make sure that their staff are updated. So when the coalition is doing monitoring and of these plans, The provider will want to make sure that, hey, when we originally submitted the plan and if we did staff development plan, the 3 teachers that we had in there, well, one of them has left and we've replaced that teacher, and now we're going to need to come back and put the new teacher in and make sure those trainings are up to date. So I didn't want to miss having that point for us here. It gets us back to the same thing as you've got to have an improvement plan that is in a submitted state, waiting to be approved, and making sure that it's available to the coalition. So once the coalition has gone in there and approved the plan, they can give feedback on it, and they also, once they've done that, then the pending task will turn to yes, because it will be looking for the provider to come back and fill in those dates. Okay, so but I guess before we go on, we are going to go look at the question box. We're going to wrap up here in a few minutes, but we want to take a few minutes to at least see what questions you have out there, if there's some things that will help the broader audience that we can get to before we have to close out. So we're going to pause for a second and review the questions that have come in since. So we had a question about providers that are already operating under a good cause exemption. If when we released the readiness rates, if the readiness rate was below 60, that provider would in fact need to reapply for the good cause exemption. Good cause exemptions are only good for 1 year, so they have been renewed annually where needed. The only way for a provider to exit probation status is to earn a readiness rate that meets the state minimum.
Okay, so here's a question about probation status. If you are a provider on probation before 16-17, is the probation year for us this year still year 1, or could we be year 2 or year 3? So in 2016-17 and 17-18 program years, there were no new providers on probation. So even if you got a low rate in one of those 2 program years, you were not put on probation. If this is the 3rd low rate that you've gotten, and you had low in 16-17, low in 17-18, you were not put on probation for those years, and you were this year, this is your year 1 provider on probation.
Okay, and I want to help clarify that. I'm looking at the question. So, and the person I believe is also asking now, if somebody was on probation from years back, from the 12-13 year, when we last published readiness rates that put providers on probation, and their 12-13 year, for instance, was a provider on probation, and now they did not earn a readiness rate that was satisfactory in 16-17 or 17-18, and now in 18-19 they have another rate below the state minimum, that will be their 2nd year on probation. So we do have those providers whose history dates back from 2012-13, who never left probationary status, but those intermediate years and 16-17 and 17-18 will not add additional years. but the earlier years may. I hope that helps clarify that.
Okay, there's a question about what tool is being used in elementary schools to assess children. The tool that's being used as part of the Flickrs is called Star Early Literacy.
Okay, we're going to pause for another moment. Okay, we'll be a little bit redundant, but we want to make sure folks are clear. So the VPK school year program and the VPK summer program are two distinct programs, and we issue readiness rates separately for those two programs. So depending on the readiness rate that was released, you can have a circumstance where either the summer program is on probation and the school year is not, or vice versa. You could have a summer program that's not on probation and a school year that is. And theoretically, you could have it where both the school year and the summer program are independently on vacation, probation. They are treated separately. Okay, so to further clarify what I said a couple minutes ago is that the only way to exit the probationary status is to receive a satisfactory rate. So if a provider was already on probation, there may be times where they did not have enough children for us to calculate a readiness rate. That provider that has those small groups of kids and they did not receive a readiness rate will remain on probation until such time that they have enough kids and that they have a readiness rate that is satisfactory. So those small in counts can impact in that way where a provider remains on probation when they do not receive a readiness rate. Okay, and we'll continue that comment that if you do not receive a readiness rate, there is, and you have not previously been on probation, you will not be placed on probation for not receiving a readiness rate. Okay, and just a clarifying comment, the improvement plans that we are talking about here are for the next upcoming program for your center. So if it's a summer program, this improvement plan will be for the upcoming summer program. If it is a school year program, obviously it would be for the 2020-21 program year. Somebody had some real eagle eyes out there and noticed on one of our slides when we had the acknowledgement page up, it must have been an earlier screenshot that said the provider acknowledgement was due on 3/19. It is due on 3/9, like it is in the original slide that we showed for that, and that is the way it is presented on the website. Okay, we want to cover a couple of things before we end today. So I'm going to go back to this slide that we presented earlier that has information on it. Some folks were asking some specific things. So if somebody clicks on the big circle in red for provider improvement process, when that page comes up, they will have a link there that they can see the approved curriculum that is just the listing that shows on our website. So that's someplace that you can find that material there. It is, of course, embedded in the improvement plan when they're logged in, but if somebody wants to go and review those curriculums where there is a link to the publishers and all that information, they'll find it under the red column underneath provider improvement, VPK provider improvement. There'll be a link there for curriculum. I think it's a listing link that you click on for VPK curriculum. Also, there was somebody that was asking about the website for the readiness rate itself, and we will see here we have a well, actually, this screenshot doesn't show it, but underneath the provider topic, there is a link there on today's website that has a link to the VPK readiness rate website. It's not on the picture that's on the screen, but it's on the same topic underneath providers. I believe we have a screenshot here that's a little bit dated. It probably is from a couple of weeks ago. So that information is out there. Again, if you also look on that third from the bottom bullet where it says VPK provider improvement, that is where we will post the slides from this PowerPoint. We usually do them as a PDF and place them out there, as well as the recording of this webinar for folks to be able to come back and reference and ask questions. So we want to move to the next page because for you all out there around the state, it's really important for you to know where some of your contacts are. So this page has all of the different regions around our state, and we have provided for those providers the regional facilitator in each area of our state, and we've given you their contact information. These are the regional facilitators that you will often hear about that will be holding specific meetings for providers on probation to give them technical assistance to help them do the things that they need to do so that they remain in compliance as a provider on probation. So we are giving you their contact information. Remember, if you are going to contact them, you may want to make sure that you're real clear about the name of your center, your provider ID, what your specific question is if you are doing that, so that they don't have very random questions that they're unable to assist you with. You also will be, like I said, there'll be meetings being conducted by different coalitions. We'll often include these people, but these are the local resource for providers on probation if they need some assistance that they have a local contact on. So we want you to be aware of it, but do be gentle with them. There's a lot of you out there, and as you can see, there's only 8 names on the screen. So if everyone and their aunt sends them an email, it will be very difficult for them to respond. So we want to make sure that we're conscious of their time. So we want you to have this. We do have our contact information on the last slide and our typical inbox for VPK questions at oel.myflorida.com. Again, if you send an email to this, make sure you include your provider ID and the name and address of your center so we know who you are. At times, this inbox can become very, very full, so you won't get an immediate response, but we try to respond to each question that comes in. But it really does need to be, that we can identify who's asking the question so that we can go do a little bit of research, and that there's a very specific thing that's being asked and a question that we can answer. Sometimes folks they think they're talking to somebody who automatically knows them, and we don't know who those people are. So we do want you to have that. We do thank you for taking the time today to join us on the call. We are at our time limit. We are at 2:30 right now. We will be looking at the questions that you all did submit, and there looks like there are hundreds of them, and seeing what we can take from those and put in frequently asked questions. Again, thank you for taking your time. I hope this has been helpful to you, and we'll look forward to hearing your voice on another call.